Hey, everybody, in today's episode, it's myself, Benjamin B., and Eric. Look, we are talking about the amends process. Now, what does this look like exactly? If you're a family member, maybe you've had your addicted loved one come to you and just tell you they're sorry for all the things that they've done and all the harm that they have caused. Well, we're here to tell you that there's a time and a place that needs to be done. And we go into detail about what the amends process looks like from a family's perspective, but also somebody that is in recovery. Look, if you're 2 weeks out of detox, now is not the time for you to go and make the amends process. It's not the time. It's not going to go that you want it to go, and it's not going to go the way that it probably should go. There's a time and a place to make amends and to make things right, and we're going to walk you through that process. So we know you're going to love this. Enjoy the show. Here we are, Real Recovery Talk. I'm your host, Tom Conrad. In today's episode, we've got Benjamin B.
What's happening, everyone?
And we also have Eric. Eric, how are you, sir?
I'm good. What's up, guys?
First things first, thank you for tuning in on the podcast app, whichever one that you choose to use. And thank you for watching on YouTube. In the end, if you have any comments, questions, or concerns, you could always reach us. info@realrecoverytalk.com. Again, that's info@realrecoverytalk.com. And ultimately, we want to help you turn your mess into your message, right, peeps?
Yes, sir.
What's up, Eric?
Not much, man.
We're going into week 10
Week 10, yeah.
of the Big Book study.
Second half of We Agnostics, yeah.
Yeah. Yep. It's been going great. Phenomenal. I think last week we had 24, 25 people on.
Yeah, it was good.
Yeah.
And we talked about God. Ooh.
Yeah. GOD. What? Group of drunks. What? Good orderly direction. What? What other acronyms are there for that?
Oh, I don't know.
There's
Who
the only
knows?
ones I know, I think.
All right. Well, here we are. We actually got what?
A light bulb. They
Yeah.
always say, hey, you use a light bulb.
You know where that came from? I just found out. The history that Facebook group, somebody asked about the light bulb, and there's actually an article about an old timer in AA in the Grapevine or something. I didn't get deep dive into the history of where the light bulb.
Slap him.
Well, the thing is it was taken out of context.
Yeah, I'm sure.
So the original article apparently, and that's why somebody asked, that it got taken out of context to today. Like, oh, your higher power can be a light bulb. That's not what that guy was saying.
Okay.
So,
Well, nobody has a clue what you're talking about right now, so we're just going to move right past that.
very simple. You cannot have a light bulb for your higher power.
Yeah, because if I take the light bulb out and throw it up against the wall, then what?
Then it's
that-
dark.
Then
Dark
it
times,
shatters.
Tom.
Then we got dark times upon us. No, but one thing that we do want to talk about today, because we all agree it's a rather important topic. Oftentimes when people get clean and sober, they want to do the apology tour. They want to go to everybody and tell them they're sorry for all the things that they did wrong. And oftentimes this happens in the first couple of weeks of somebody's sobriety. And it's like, well, number one, you probably don't mean it. Number two, you don't even know what you're saying. And what this process would be called in the recovery sense is making amends, right? And what step is that inside the 12 steps? Huh?
Step 9.
Step 9 is we properly made amends to those we had harmed, except for when to do so would injure them or others. Am I right?
Correct.
Ben.
What was the first word you said of the sentence?
I don't know. I said properly. Is that part of it?
I don't know. I don't know what part.
Made direct amends to such people wherever
Yeah.
possible, except when to do so would injure them or others.
Yeah, so
it's
I
really
said-
funny when I get put on the spot. Like all of a sudden, I forget.
Yeah, me too. Me too.
Yeah.
But that you said the apology tour, and I talk about that all the time. And there's a reason why that's step 9. Like it's the first one we want, and this will segue into what we're talking about. But it's the first one. Look, I was probably the same way. You were probably the same way. It's the first one we want to do when we come in here is we want to do step 9, but it's step 9 for a reason, right? Because I've got a step 4 where I find out the truth about myself and I begin to see myself the way the world sees me, right? Once I talk about this all the time. People tell me, "Hey, I'm going to do my 9th step. How do you think it's going to go?" And I tell them I think it's going to go horrible because it's a process. It's probably going to turn out okay, but the process of the 12 steps, the process of each step, it's all a process. From coming in and doing step 1, 2, 3, coming in beat up the way I am and learning about myself, writing all that stuff down and finding out about myself and realizing the way I've led my life and the way I've stepped all over other people, and then realizing I'm going to have to go to these people now that I see what I've done and see who I am, and I'm going to have to go to these people. That process to me was terrifying. The fact that I'm going to have to sit down with somebody and tell them how I think I hurt them, how I think I ruined their life, and then I've got to sit there and listen to them tell me how I actually ruined their life, and I got to be okay with anything they said. With anything they say, take it or leave it, I have to be okay with it. So that process was terrifying, right? And when I come in here and it's the first one that I want to do, what I want to really do is go to everybody and say, hey, tell me I still have you. It's the most selfish thing I can do. I'm saying, hey, tell me you're still there. Tell me I haven't lost everyone in my life, so I can tell me we're okay, so I can feel better and I can go back to my room and go to sleep, right? And we have to remember that there's two sister fellowships to Alcoholics Anonymous. There's Al-Anon for loved ones, wives, husbands, friends. And then there's ACA, Adult Children of Alcoholics, for, as the book puts it, the warped lives of blameless children. Warped lives of blameless children. Man, my son, he's in that category. Warped life of no fault of his because of my disease. And those two fellowships exist for one reason and one reason only. And that's so that they can learn how to live whole again. And because of how sick I've made them. The alcoholics made it. I'm sorry after 10 days in detox isn't going to cut it, man. The principle behind that step isn't forgiveness, it's justice.
I'm glad that you mentioned it and described it as being terrifying, because that's the exact word, the process. And knowing that you have to move forward with that process the way it's supposed to be done is terrifying. Saying sorry is easy.
Yeah, exactly.
And the reason being, sorry holds no depth and weight. There's no follow-up to sorry.
Right.
You say sorry and it's over. Yeah. You make amends and you're lining yourself up to be hit with action.
Yeah.
And it's going to take action to fix it. And that's what gets pointed out to you by these other people. It's interesting, too, that you mentioned the process. Have you ever heard this before? You probably have. But I think it's important to talk about because, in my opinion, making amends takes real courage.
Yes.
I can't even put into words. I'm reiterating. You said terrifying. Yeah. Therefore, to combat that terrifying feeling, you have to have courage to confront it. Yeah. But with that being said, one of the things that was pointed out to me by my sponsor, he said to do them in this order. He said, do the definitelys.
I've heard this.
Do the laters, do the maybes, then do the nevers. Yeah. Because you got the ones that you know that you definitely have to make, and you just go at them and you get them done. The laters are the ones that you have to go pursue, and for whatever the circumstances may be, you got to kind of track them down. Right. The maybes, so throughout this process too, in my experience and through hearing others, the thing about making amends, we think we have a crystal ball. And that's the other thing that making amends taught me. I thought I know what the outcome to this is going to be. And then I go make that amends, and it would be something completely different, a different experience than what I thought. It proved to me I did not have a crystal ball. Point is as I do the definitelys, I do the laters, then I get to do the courage. I get the courage because I saw some outcomes to do the maybes. And then there's those ones, I'm never doing that. And let me tell you why I'm never doing it. Because that man did more wrong to me than I did to him. What's the big book say? It's easier to go to easier to go to a friend than to an enemy, but we find it much more beneficial, right? Yeah. The nevers, your mind becomes open once you begin to experience this. Yeah. The willingness shows up.
Exactly, and I love the way you put that. But you have to understand that this is a selfless act, right? So people say after I tell them, it's going to be terrifying. I mean, it's probably going to work out good, but I think it's going to, it's going to be what it's going to be. And they're like, but I know I'm going to feel better afterwards. Well. Maybe you will, maybe you won't. Buckle up, man, right? Maybe you'll feel better, but maybe you won't. I've had people not accept amends, and that's fine, because what they're doing when they don't accept my amends is they're telling me exactly what I can do. They don't ever want to see me again. Okay, but I tried. And I have to honor what they tell me, and that's it. Okay, I'm done. But when I say it's what was I saying? I was saying it's
I lost track.
I can't. I don't know, but I did pull up the the definition. And it's pretty interesting. Make minor changes in order to make it fairer, more accurate, or more up to date. The rule was amended to apply only to non-members.
That's amending like something. That's a different than mending. We're using it in the term of like mending a fence. When you mend a fence, you make it whole. So you're making the relationship whole.
Right.
You're making it right.
Yeah, but where I was going with that was a lot of times people listen or they think of the amends process as all verbal.
Right.
Right? Let me just like speak my way through this. I'm sorry for what I did. Blah 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 blah. Like that's not really an amends. That is an apology. There's a stark difference between an apology and an amends. An amends, at least in the context of this conversation, is like, yes, you can obviously apologize, but what can I do to make things better?
Right.
And people oftentimes forget that like there could in fact be some things that you have to do in order to make this,
right.
Like we talk about financial amends, right?
Yeah.
Let me just finish this one thought. And we've all done it. We've stolen from people. We've, maybe robbed people or whatever. And we get to this point of making an amends. Well, they may say, hey, I want my $500 back.
Bring your checkbook.
Or they may say, you know what? Just keep doing what you're doing.
Yeah. And I've had both of those.
Yeah.
And what I was saying about feeling better, it's like, I'm not doing this to feel better. I'm not making an amends to feel better. I'm making an amends because an amends is warranted and owed. That's it. It's owed. It's like paying the electric bill, man. You want to grin while you pay the electric bill? Go ahead, but pay the bill.
Let me throw something at that too, to follow that up. Because if you look at the step itself, the way that it's written, except when to do so would injure them or others.
Right.
Like Eric just said, yes, you're not going to make yourself feel better. And my sponsor pointed out to me, except when to do so would injure them or others. I'm thinking, oh, I'm going to be injured.
Right.
He's like, dude, you don't fall under others.
Right.
Right. It's not about me feeling better. In fact, I might be setting myself up for some injury.
Yeah.
But I got to be willing to go at it to make it right. And I want to follow up with what Tom was talking about, the action part. I think it's appropriate time to bring up. I was given a formula, and this doesn't come directly out of the Big Book of Alcoholics Anonymous. Like through the paragraphs, you can piece it together because it does like have a couple lines in there that are on different pages.
Mm-hmm.
But my sponsor told me this isn't an exact quote out of the book, but it's been pieced together through putting all the paragraphs together. Here's what I did to you. Here's what I'll try to do in the future. Did I leave anything out? And how do you want me to make it right?
That's good. That's a good outline.
So like the you make it right. Essentially, I'm powerless and I'm giving you the opportunity to say, tell me. And here's the other thing to that too. Did I leave anything out? Sometimes I have no idea to the extent that I've hurt somebody else. Maybe I see surface level. Maybe
most of the time.
Maybe even though I stole $1,000 out of my mom's purse and made amends for that, what really killed her was the sleep I was stealing from her.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't mention that. That's why you give them the opportunity also to say, like,
right.
Did I leave anything out? No, Ben, it wasn't that stuff that hurt me the most. Let me tell you what it actually was.
Exactly.
Like,
when I made my amends with my mother, I'm 53 now. I was probably 48 when I made the amends with my mom. And my mom has 9 brothers and sisters. So she told me, she said, she did what a mother will do. Just keep living your life the way you are. I just love that. I was a couple years sober at this point when I made my amends with my mom. That's how long it took me because I needed to be really ready. I had built the relationship back with her, but I hadn't yet made that amends. And she wanted to let me off with that. You're my son, just like a mother will, just keep doing what you're doing and live your life this way. And I said, no, Mom, I need to know. I need to know how I affected you and how I want you to tell me. And so I listened to her, and I had no idea about this. She had 9 brothers and sisters from, old school family from Tennessee, and she talked to them every day. She became for like 2 years, she became a recluse, stopped talking to her brothers and sisters because she didn't want to field phone calls. She didn't want to field questions about where I am. Have you talked to them? Have you seen them? So she became a recluse for 2 years, didn't talk to them, barely talked to them. And she told me that my amends to her was, Mom, you will never not know where I am again. And I will never, if you call me, I will always respond to you within an appropriate amount of time, but you'll never go to bed not knowing where I am again. My mom passed away on New Year's Eve last year. You guys remember this? But she died knowing where I was, man. For 7 years, she was able to know where I was every day. That's an amends.
Yeah.
But I couldn't let her let me off like that.
Mhm.
You know, I had to say, no, I need to know, Mom.
Very well put.
Yeah, you can't be letting yourself off the hook.
What does it say? We're easy on others, but hard on ourselves.
For families listening too, you touched on this earlier, but I'd kind of just like to hit home the point, like a scenario, for instance, because I used to do this. And it's funny because I spoke at a H&I meeting last night, and like amends actually came up as a topic inadvertently at the end. That's what everybody was talking about. But for instance, I'd show up to detox, right? And I'm a couple days in, and I think to myself, I need to call Mom and make everything right.
Right.
So I call Mom. I apologize for everything. You know how the phone call ends? Mom, I'm out of cigarettes. Can I get $20 on my account so that the detox can get me some Marlboro Reds, please? Like,
yeah,
what?
Yeah.
So I think and I bring that up because it's so important to look at your motives behind making the amends. And I brought up too, again, the topic at that meeting I spoke at last night inadvertently became about amends, but there was a young kid there after listening to me talk about amends and the formula and the motives behind it, puts his hand up, this young kid, sweet as could be, dude. But he's not in a spot where he can see the truth about himself yet, which you were talking about, doing a fourth and fifth step before. And he's like, I need to make amends to my ex-girlfriend.
Yeah.
And then he goes on this tangent about how he hopes one day they can be civil together. And you could just see the whole group just kind of looking at this poor little 19-year-old kid. He's probably 19, dude. Just like, oh,
doesn't
buddy,
know what he doesn't know.
It didn't click.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
but that's because he's not armed with the facts about himself by going through those previous steps.
Right. And like I said, the principle behind that step is not forgiveness, it's justice. Justice is, how do I make this right? And I was telling that same thing that I said at the beginning of this when I talked about how it's the most selfish thing we can do in the early, because we're really just saying, hey, tell me you're still there. And there was this girl sitting there. She was new. She was still going through it. You could tell. And she was looking at me like she wanted to bite my head off, man. I thought she was angry with what I was saying. But when I was done, she shared, this was a few years back, and she says, you know, what you're just saying there about how selfish it is. She says, I just now got off the phone with my husband. She says, and I asked him, hey, are we okay? Are we good? Are you still with me? She said that he said, yeah, I'm still there. And she said the first thought that went through her mind is, I've got one more time. He's still there. I can do it one more time.
Oh, you want to hear a funny one, dude? This is one of my favorite about hearing about somebody else's amends. He won't care if I say his name because he knows I tell this story all the time. You know Jacob.
Yeah.
Yeah. I love Jacob. I've known the kid since he was 18. You know who I'm talking about? I won't say his last name. He knows I talk about this all the time. But I was working at a center. This was back in 2017, and I ran a group on amends. And it was so funny. We're running the group. He's like, yeah, I need to make amends to my now ex-girlfriend, who had only been his ex for a few days, right? Just broke up with them, and then he went to treatment. The whole group, everyone's like, no, don't do it. You got to go through the steps first. And when you get there, you get there. And in this program, just like ours here at Rock, we didn't take their cell phones. They had their cell phones. Next morning, he comes walking into group, tail between his legs, head down, dude, tears coming down his face. Everyone's like, what happened? He's like, I did exactly what everybody told me not to do. I called my ex-girlfriend. And we're like, okay, well, what happened? And he's like, well, actually, I sent her a text message. That's what it was. I'm like, oh, you did? And I had him pull his phone out. I'm like, read it to the group. And it started out like this. This is why you don't make amends in the beginning, dude. It said, Dear Anna, I need you to understand that wasn't me. It was the drugs and the alcohol that had me acting that way. Dude,
no kid, it was you.
I busted out laughing. And dude, I mean, I got a great relationship with this guy to this day. But like, to start off an amends, I need you to understand. No, dude, who am I to tell you?
Like I said, we don't know what we don't know, man. We have no clue.
Yeah.
You know?
You know, I think going back to family members and stuff too, like, don't be fooled by this, because there's a very real possibility that knowingly or unknowingly, people in recovery can use this as kind of like that girl you were just talking about.
Mhm.
Use it as a manipulation tactic. And to a family member that doesn't know any better, they can hear that and think, oh my gosh, he's never apologized to me for anything.
Yeah.
Look at the change that is coming.
Yeah.
When in reality, it's like,
Yeah.
maybe this person's trying to gauge where you're at. Did
Right.
they reel you in just enough to be able to go out and do it again?
Yeah.
You know? And so,
Well,
go ahead.
Well, that's where, like, look, if you're in touch, if you're in tune with your loved one who's going through this, you're going to see a change in them before they come and make that amends to you.
Yes.
You're going to see them moving differently. And before they come, you might even wonder, I wonder why he hasn't apologized to me. But you're going to see a drastic change. The book says it. Other people see it before we do, in the way that person thinks, acts, and behaves. Right? Thinks, and you're going to see that long before they come and do that and make that amends to you. At least you should.
Yeah.
If they're working this program as prescribed. You know, you're going to see that. And that's what I mean by their, look, it was told to me, just, you know, let your actions speak so loud no one can hear what you're saying. And that's really what that psychic change is.
Right.
You know,
let me go back to the behavioral part, because this is a good time to bring this up. One of the ways that you're going to understand that your loved one is behaving correctly, we partnered with this company called SoberLink. SoberLink, it's a portable breathalyzer device that has been, it's a good tool to have. Now, why did we partner with them? Because we talk all the time about having the proper tools in our toolbox for sobriety, and SoberLink can do that for you. There's a couple features that probably need to be discussed. Number one, obviously it's portable. It can go with you anywhere. It's small, it's discreet. It has facial recognition. So it actually knows who it is that's blowing in this. I can't just pass it off to Ben and say, hey, Ben, will you blow in this for me? Doesn't work that way. It's tamper proof, so you can't mess with it. So it's a good tool for you to have. Now, SoberLink isn't designed to catch you in a relapse. It's designed to give you accountability. Most people want to incorporate SoberLink in their recovery journey. And as a family member, what's cool is you can have it set up to where maybe the results come to you, or maybe the results go to a therapist or an accountability partner, whatever it is that everybody decides is going to be the best option. Now, you could set it up to where you blow in this thing. It's recommended 2 to 3 times a day. Most people set it up breakfast time, lunchtime, and then dinner time. And it's again, we talk about added tools to our toolbox. It's a great thing to have. It doesn't take the place of Alcoholics Anonymous. It doesn't take the place of treatment. That's not what this is for. It's not going to be a replacement for those, but it can be a supplemental tool that you can incorporate. And oftentimes what people do is they incorporate it more once they graduate treatment, go home. It's something good for you to have. Maybe you're transitioning back to work and you're now in this environment where, you know, you're back to where things are and where you used to drink and who you used to drink with, and back in your stomping grounds. SoberLink can help you navigate that journey. So we're super glad that we got to partner with them, and they're kind enough to give us a link. So you can go to realrecoverytalk.com/RRT. Again, it's realrecoverytalk.com/RRT, and you'll get 50% off your first device. So thank you, SoberLink. But going back to the behavioral piece of it, that's a big.
Yeah, you're gonna see them moving. For instance, even with something like that, like SoberLink, they're not going to be arguing with you asking them to do something. If that's the criteria for them to stay in your house, or for a marriage, a husband and wife who, hey, okay, that's great, you're back from treatment,
right?
Okay, but I don't believe you, so I need you to. If you're going to live at the house, I need you to do this, right?
Yeah.
Well, you're going to notice they're not pushing back on that because they're starting to move different, right? They're
right.
not like, that's what I mean. Their attitude's different. Sobriety's an attitude, man.
I like that. Sobriety is an attitude. It's not so much an action, it's an attitude.
You know, it's cool. I want to tell a little story about an amends that Whitney and I had to make together.
Yeah.
That ties into this person had time to see us in action, straightening out our lives first. So there was this girl. I'll just call her Jess for sake of this, Jessica. Back when Whitney and I were in active addiction, we both worked in a restaurant, and all the servers would leave their purses in a certain area, right? And Whitney and I, it was actually to this day, Whitney went, I'm just as guilty, but Whitney saw money sticking out of this girl's purse, $800 cash. Whitney ganked it. And the reason that I play a part in this too is, Whitney showed it to me. She's like, I got this money. Let's get out of here. So we went and bought $800 worth of oxys and heroin that night. But the thing is this girl, of course she blamed me because Whitney looked like the innocent one. But so for a long time, this girl had this huge resentment against me. And once I got sober back in Florida, and I didn't return to Minnesota for, I think, like another 6 or 7 years. So we end up going to eat at this restaurant when I go and visit. Whitney and I went up, and lo and behold, our server walks up, and it's her. So Whitney and I we're like, oh man, we got to make this right. Like the opportunity to make the amends presented itself. Yeah. We left the restaurant when we were done eating, went to the ATM, grabbed cash, grabbed some extra cash to, we considered it interest, right, so to speak. Went back, we went into the restaurant, and we go to hand this girl the money. And she told us no. We ended up jamming it, like physically in a nice way, grabbed her apron and jammed it in there anyway. But the reason she told us, the reason she didn't want to give us the money, she broke down crying and gave us both a hug. And she said, I hated you two. I absolutely hated you two. And after both of you left Minnesota, my husband fell into meth addiction. And she was like, now I understand. And let me tell you something. I've been watching the two of you on social media for the last 6, 7 years and see what you're doing with your lives now. And it gave me hope because I knew how you were and I see how you are now. Dude.
Yeah, that's heavy.
It's powerful.
Yeah.
It was the right time. I think had I made amends sooner, it probably just gave the money. It wouldn't have had the same impact. And she said, she's like, you have no idea how bad I needed this money right now because my husband has smoked it all in a pipe away.
Yeah, wow.
Like, that was wild because her husband, when we lived up there, didn't even hardly drink.
Yeah.
And then he got into meth addiction.
It's crazy, man, that you just don't know, where life's going to take you like that. And that's where God has a part in. We're talking about the amends process, and where's God in all this? I mean, like when you'll know when it's time, but we have to stand ready to do that when the time comes. And that's exactly what that book means when it says we might not be able to make these amends now. We might be miles away. Like you didn't see her for 6 years, but it says we have to stand ready to make these amends when they present themselves. Yep. It's exactly what you did,
Yeah.
And that's it. I still live in the same area where I did all my damage. I've got amends to make out there. If I don't know who they are, where they are, but if I see them, I'll know.
I forgot to mention that $800 was her rent payment, so she didn't even make her rent that month either.
Wow,
dude, we did her dirty.
Yeah,
scumbag.
Yeah,
I admit it today, man.
Yeah.
Well, that was fun.
That's the beautiful thing about the amends process, though, is that when I see people today, I can say, yeah, you're right. Everything you say about me was true, but not anymore.
Right.
And here, real quick before we end, here's where we move on from the amends process.
Pull that mic a little closer.
Is once I've made that amends and they've accepted that amends, I've made it, and this is especially with loved ones, I don't continue to make it. So what I mean by that is once I've paid that debt and that debt has been paid, I don't continue to pay for it. And what I mean is, and this is usually what I've had with family members where that person accepted my amends, for instance, my sister, but still wants to hold this against me for the rest of my life, and to the point that I had to cut her out of my life because I am not that person anymore, and I will no longer be, I've made that amends, you accepted that amends, I will no longer pay for that debt. and that's a hard thing to do because of guilt and shame, but it's very necessary for us to move on. We're not a doormat, I don't let my past mean that I'm a doormat today.
Right.
The big book says once we've done our part, it's water under the bridge.
That's it.
And it was explained to me what that means is that I can't be held hostage anymore.
Right. But you see in relationships, especially husband and wife relationships, where, one got sober, the other one was a normie, and that one, they accept the amends, but yet, an argument comes up, they throw it at them. Years later, they're still throwing it at them, and that's not right.
Yeah. Well, let's wrap this up. We got to set up for the big book study.
This was a good topic. I could keep going on this. There's so much we didn't touch on, but
save it for a later date, Ben.
Or I'll try, Tom. I'll contain myself.
Go walk across the street. There's something over there that you need.
Do some push-ups.
All right. That is it for this episode of Real Recovery Talk. Thank you for tuning in. In the end, if you have any comments, questions, or concerns, you can always reach us, info@realrecoverytalk.com. Again, that's info@realrecoverytalk.com. And ultimately, we want to help you turn your mess into your message. That is it. We will see y'all later.